Prime Media audiences. This is your host, Ladette, joining you here today with a special guest. I am joined here by Dr. Abdi Jibril, Commissioner for Civil and Political and Socioeconomic Rights. He's joining me from the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. Dr. Abdi, thank you so much for joining me here at Prime Media. I really appreciate you taking your time from your busy schedule to be here at the studio. Thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you for having me, Lidas.
Yes. So we'll get straight to discussion because there's a lot going on in regards to human rights in Ethiopia, and we just recently are hearing about human rights reports that was also on the media regarding the northern part of Ethiopia. We've had reports from Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International. We also are familiar with University of Gondar, who is also reporting on human rights issues. But in general, we want to start off with what the Ethiopian Rights Commission, how it's formed. We want our audience to know, how it's formed, what the background of the organization is, its independence specifically from the government of Ethiopia, source of fund and so forth, and how is the organization functioning, Dr. Abdi?
Okay, thank you very much, Lidat, for that question. So Ethiopia, we can put the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission within the global and Ethiopian context. If we start from the global perspective, generally these ideas about governance, about constitutions, migrates across border generally. So the idea of national human rights institution have been on the agenda in the United Nations organization since its formation in 1945. But the turning point in national human rights institution was the early 1990s. So as you recall, that period would followed the fall of Berlin Wall, as we call it. So the fall of Berlin Wall signifies the fall of communism and that's forms of state government. And most states, because of the fall of communism, the Cold War came to an end. So as one of American political scientists call it, the end of history. So to mean that finally there is no Cold War or bipolar world. So during that period, a lot of states or many states transformed from communism or authoritarian regime into democracy. So one of again, another political scientist call it the third wave of democratization because of the fact that a lot of states engaged in the process of democratization. So what happened during this is that in 1990s, a lot of national human rights institutions were established, and our Ethiopian context also can be seen from that perspective. So what happened is that in early 1990s, as you recall, in 1991, the Derg regime fell, and the new regime, transitional government, was formed, and a new constitution was established or enacted in 1994. So that constitution established democratic institution, and one of those democratic institutions is the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. So the commission allows or empowers the Ethiopian legislature, the House of People's Representatives, to establish Human Rights Commission. The legislature, the parliament, took that power into action in 2000, so like 22 years ago. So what we are saying, the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission is not a new institution, but what is new may be the reforms that has been going on since 2019. So in 2018, as you recall, a new change occurred in Ethiopia. There was change of leadership. The new leadership engaged or embarked on a lot of reforms, including human rights and including institutions like Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. So in 2019, a year later, following that reform and an institution building, the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission was one of the institutions selected for reform, and a new commissioner was appointed. And since then, the commission engaged in several reform activities, including restructuring of its organization and also adopting a new strategy for 5 years, and also amending the establishing legislation that was established in 2000. So because of that, it is this reform that is new. So you raised the issue of independence. We can see that point from two perspectives in terms of institutional independence, that the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission is separate from either the legislature or three branches of government, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. Mm-hmm. In that sense, it's a separate institution. It doesn't belong to any one of them. So it was formed in that political context of democratization, as I said, to improve human rights education on the ground, to improve the promotion and the protection of human rights in that sense. But what happened since its establishment for about more than 20 years, the Commission was not recognized at international level as an independent institution. One of the reasons is because of it is a function or lack of functional independence, although it is institutionally separate from other branches of government, including the legislature or the executive or the judiciary. But in terms of what it does and the reports it issues, the investigation it conducts, it wasn't considered to be that much independent and compliant with the rules that governs national human rights institution at a global level or at international level. We call that the Paris Principles. So there is an organization, or in a way, an alliance of national human rights institutions that accredits national human rights institution in general. So the membership, for example, of that alliance is 118 members. So almost 118 states have national human rights institution or national human rights institution in general. So of them, it's only around 86. Not all of them are A status. So it's only recently, just last year in 2021, that Ethiopian Human Rights Commission was recognized by the Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions, we usually call it GANRI for short, recognized as one of A status human rights institution, meaning that it complies with the rules and regulations that governs national human rights institution. So in that regard, we do not have any doubts about its independence. We already know since the institution, the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, has engaged in the reform that we will obtain that status because of how we have been operating, because of how the institution have been structured and the work that we have been doing. So in that regard, it's not only institutionally separate from the other branches of government, but we are also functionally independent. And we have been producing human rights investigation report that, of course, may not be couldn't have been accepted if the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission has not been reformed. So we see that in that sense, one of our landmark report that we produced recently is the report that we conducted or issued jointly with the United Nations Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights. So it mainly deals with the conflict in the north, particularly in Tigray. In terms of the period of that report, it includes only until the date when the Ethiopian federal forces withdraw from Tigray region. So we issued that we found violations from all parties that involved in the conflict, and despite the reservation that Ethiopian government had, it said that there are violations that the Ethiopian government recognized, and it wanted to monitor and, for that matter, implement the recommendations that the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, together with the Office of High Commissioner, issued. So based on that, the government already established interministerial committee to implement the recommendation that we issued. So we have no doubt that we conduct our investigation in an independent way, based on international standard of human rights investigation. So based on that, we are sure that our reports are acceptable generally for all categories of persons, because we use an internationally accepted standards of investigation, and we are basically functionally independent from the government.
Wow. Excellent, Dr. Abdi, and congratulations to you and your team on achieving the A status in such a short time. I think it's very important, even though the organization has been established for a while, like you said, but the reforms that has taken place has certainly granted you that privilege. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And what are some of the most pressing issues that the Commission is working on right now?
In cases where the country is in conflict, and most cases not only in Ethiopia, but also in other countries, serious human rights violations usually occur during conflict, usually armed conflict. So we, as an institution, the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission has spent a lot of energy and resource on following up the human rights violations that have been occurring during these armed conflict. So that has assumed our attention. So I have already referred to the joint report that we issued or prepared together with the United Nations Office of High Commissioner, but we didn't stop there. We followed up with another report for events that occurred since July 2001. So that particularly we have been following up regarding what have been or the violations that have been occurring in Afar and Amara region. And so that is one of our issues, and we have to pay attention to conflicts, and because during conflict a lot of human rights violation, and usually serious human rights violation, occur. So based on that, we have already produced and publicized a report where we found out that Tigrayan forces have been killing a lot of civilians, not only individuals that are engaged in armed conflict, or that we call usually in international humanitarian law as combatant, but simply civilians. And we have found out that the Tigrayan forces have used rape as a weapon of war, as a weapon of armed conflict to achieve their purposes. So we have found out violations of several human rights, including destruction of educational institutions. So as a result, children couldn't go to school, meaning that there is a violation of the rights to education. So we have documented and recorded a lot of destruction of health facilities, and as a result, there is a violation of the right to health. So this is in addition to the violation of the right to life that occurred either because of the attack on civilian without distinguishing military objective as required by international humanitarian law from civilian objective, or because of the acts of extrajudicial killing. So some people who are not engaged in active military combat were killed without any due process of law. So in addition to these violation of right to life, there were also violation of other human rights, including right to education, right to health, right to water, or right to food, because of the displacement of civilians that occurred due to the armed conflict on the ground. So the situation of the displaced people, the victims of sexual violence or gender-based violence is actually disturbing when you read the report that came out of our investigation that was conducted in Amhara and Afar. So we are not limited to the conflicts in the north. We also follow up human rights violations that occur any places in Ethiopia. So, for example, we reported on the violation that occurred in Oromia very recently with regard to the incident that happened in Karayu. So we also issued a very recent report on regarding incidents of violations of human rights in Benishangul Gumuz. So mostly these are occurred in a situation of conflict, and that is taking a lot of energy and resources of the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. So that actually distracts us from the other activities that we should have been done routinely. So it takes the resources and energy that we didn't expect, or that should have been done in a normal circumstance. So those are usually some of the burning issue that we have been trying to address.
Oh, great. What are your goals regarding those issues? Like what type of support would you like from the government, from the citizens, and international partners? Since, I mean, this is a lot of work that the Commission is doing. It's historically the first time it's been independent, and looking at the reports that has been done, whether it's in the Oromia region or in the northern part of the country, it's quite clear that the work is done in independent manner, and the people of Ethiopia first and foremost, and then the rest of the world continues to have the trust in the human rights organization that you'll be the guardian of the country in regards to human rights. What are some of the support that your commission is looking to get?
Okay. So yeah, without the support of the public in general, it wouldn't be possible to conduct the investigation that we have been doing. So that requires resources in several ways. So maybe we can see in terms of short-term or long-term challenges that we face, and we may also request our supporters also in that line. In Ethiopia, particularly at this moment, human rights work is a very difficult task to carry out. one thing that we are facing, if I start from some structural problems that we face, or most Ethiopian institution or democratic institution face, that relate to either our political situation or our culture, or even in some cases also issues of resources and issues of human power. So if I start from the political issues or the political culture, we have to sometimes admit that in Ethiopia, the political culture that we have had for a long period of time is not a democratic culture. So it is mainly full of violence, and including individuals that are close, that are friends, have been killing each other. So we can detect the situation of what happened during the Derg regime, or the situation of or the phenomenon of Red Terror, where Ethiopians of different classified themselves in terms of ideology, and were killing each other. We did not have a very peaceful power transfer, whether you take the Derg regime, how the Derg regime was overthrown, or the imperial regime, or even how Haile Selassie himself came to power. If you see that history, it was involved violence one way or another, whether Haile Selassie was killing or imprisoning Iyasu, or whether he's doing with others. So it's full of violence, and that is really a deep challenge, deep-rooted challenge. So if the power transfer is usually peaceful, if nobody in Ethiopia seeks to have power or obtain power through military means, through gun, it would have been easier. So this is one thing that we, in the long run, we need to change as a society. So from every individual or every citizen in Ethiopia, we need to change how we think about, transfer of power. And if every one of us stopped, fighting for, in terms of of course there is several ways of fighting. If we stop killing for the power, then it would have been a better place. So that is something that I personally and the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission request us from every citizen in Ethiopia to refrain from engaging in violence, whether that is for the purpose of achieving certain political end. So if these have been peaceful, we wouldn't have had what we are going through in the north. So when the individuals wanted to stay in power with armed struggle. So that's one thing. So we request in this regard, the request from every individual, every citizen, to avoid and to use peaceful means that doesn't cost life, that doesn't cost the violations of human rights in general. So it's not only in political arena or in the violation of civil and political rights. When we talk about civil and political rights, we have been saying, we have already referred to cases where life has been lost and there were violations of the right to life. We are talking about the situations of arbitrary detention, and these are violations of civil and political rights in general. But we also need to have an appeal to the citizen in general in terms of changing the culture that sometimes perpetrate what we call structural discrimination at very grassroots level. So now our focus is on conflict, our focus is on violation of civil and political rights, but when we see the situation or the problem, whether there is armed struggle or not, we see our culture allows, for example, the discrimination of women, the discrimination against women, the discrimination against person with disability. So in that, we actually require a change of culture in that regard, where a woman, for example, or girl child equally goes to school with boy child, and where the men and women have equal rights at a political level or at every level, and ensure their equal participation in the society in general, whether that is persons with disability or whether that is women. So in terms of discrimination against women, it doesn't arise from the armed struggle. It is the discrimination that as every one of individual do or carry out against girls and women in general. So in terms of an institution, so we understand that we are limited resources, so in that sense we have to mobilize. So whether we are talking about human resource or resources, material resources in terms of materials that we require to conduct our daily businesses, or whether it is financial resources. We are in a developing country like Ethiopia. The resources are limited, so we try to use in the most efficient way, but we also request all our partners and citizens to contribute in terms of resources, in terms of human resource. We are now building a new team based on the new organizational structure that has followed the reform of the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. We are engaging a lot of individuals, ensuring the diversity of the staff at the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, not only the staff, but the diversity of the commissioners themselves. We are trying to operate in a different states. For example, we have 8 branches outside Addis Ababa. These are usually based in the city, in the regional states. So except in cases of Oromia, where we have a branch office in Jimma, and in other cases they were limited to the capital city of the states. So when we have sufficient resources, we plan to expand these and reach individuals at every administrative level that we can. So in that sense, we need to expand, mobilize resource, and request all in terms of providing resources to the Commission and support to carry out the human rights promotion and the protection at every level possible, and to get accessible to the people in general.
Great. So what do you offer, what do you do with the reports after you've compiled reports, done the research about human rights violation in certain region? What is the process? Is there a process on the findings? What are the collaboration, if so, if you have any, with other organizations or other government institutions to follow up on the results of the human rights violations?
Yes, very good question, Lidette. So what we do is we conduct, as just to note again, we engage in the promotion and protection of human rights in general. So what we do, we conduct investigation on our own initiative, or when a complaint is filed with the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. So in that regard, when we conduct our investigation or conduct our monitoring activity, we usually consult with the relevant stakeholders on the findings from our monitoring report. In terms of investigation, we usually send our recommendation to concerned authorities, or we make it public. So, of course, after we issued the recommendation, we follow up the implementation of our recommendation too. But what happens in generally in how, if you see how international human rights law or the protection of human rights works, institutions or national human rights institutions like us, or even at a global level, is what they do is usually they publicize the findings of their investigation. And it is the obligation of the states, and in our case, the obligation of the Ethiopian government to follow up and implement that recommendation. And we actually follow up whether that recommendation is implemented. So so far, the major report that we have issued, as I said earlier, is the joint report that we issued together with, or jointly with the Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights at the United Nations. So when we issued, of course, we understand that the government will not agree with whatever we say, but the government undertook to implement the recommendations that we included in that report. So it has, for example, established interministerial committee to implement that recommendations. So once we issue, it will not remain on paper, our recommendations. We are sure that our recommendations are implemented, and we have, because now in cases when we have been issuing, or as Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, since we have been issuing independent reports like this one, this is a new phenomenon or new institutional experience that we have been establishing, and we have seen that the government is also on the other part willing to implement the recommendations that we issue. So another point that I may raise again with regard to, for example, the situation or the event that happened with regard to Karayu, we issued a report. So when we felt that there is something that we do, we already followed up with another statement with regard to the progress. So to urging the government to carry out specific activities in terms of implementing the recommendation that we issued. So we are sure that the recommendation that we issue, the recommendation that we propose, is usually taken seriously by government in general and is being implemented.
Okay. I believe your work also, regardless of whether the government accept the report or is in agreement, it's also in the government's best interest to take the recommendations as a government, at the same time as citizens will be demanding these issues. Is there a location, or is there a specific method for citizens to report any kind of human rights abuse to the Commission? Is there a hotline, or is there what is the link between the citizens to the Human Rights Commission?
Yeah, it's true that I have already raised about issues of accessibility already, that we have our branches across the country, but we are also accessible. We have hotline that any citizen can call or report any violations, or even complain about their violation or their violation of their individual rights. Also, it doesn't concern, like, let us say, a lot of people. Even if it concerns one single individual, they can make a complaint individually by appearing before the Commission at the head office or any one of the branch. They can also make a call. They can also submit electronically their complaint. So we can reach the population in general in this way. But you may question how much that source of communication is accessible to Ethiopian population, who are mostly living in rural areas. Yeah. So that's what we are working on, generally trying to reach the larger parts of the population.
Okay. And in regards to source of funds, where is your funding for the commission coming? Just want to
Okay, yeah,
touch upon that.
I failed to raise that when I recall that you asked me that question. It is very clear in our establishment proclamation that the sources of fund for the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission is two. One, that is from the state coffer, the budget assigned by the legislature, and the other is any assistance or grants that we can receive from other sources. So the sources from which we can receive from is not limited in that sense. We want, for example, for this year, our budget from the state cover stands around 103 million Ethiopian birr, but that's not the only resource that we depend upon. Based on our establishment proclamation that allows us to seek assistance and to seek grants from other sources, we usually develop projects, design projects that address violations of human rights in general, and they compete for funding like any other institution. So in that sense, we have already some projects running and that have been supporting our activities. So for example, if you remember, we launched a project very recently that deals with national inquiry relating to persons deprived of liberty. So these projects, we found funding from a source together with the Federal Supreme Court, so we are going to implement and also the Ministry of Justice. So just like those institutions, we seek assistance and funding either from domestic sources or even external donors, including institutions like the United Nations.
Great. Dr. Abdi, I think we're running out of time. I think you've given us a great explanation of the commission. I really thank you so much for your time, and hope that you will come back again to Pride Media, and we'll learn a lot more from you in regards to the commission. I really appreciate you.
Thank you very much for having me. It is a great pleasure talking to you and explaining about the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Prime Media audiences, this is my half an hour with Dr. Abdi Jibril. I'll be back with another guest. Have a great evening.